you for joining our daily action call today. Today is Wednesday, April 8th. We're glad that you're joining us. We'll give everybody about another 5 or 10 seconds to join us, and I'll go ahead and get all the announcements at the beginning of the call out of the way. First of all, again, thank you for joining us. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GSO Chamber for all of the latest information. We update that regularly, almost on a minute-by-minute basis. So make sure that you're tuned into us again at GSO Chamber for the latest information. We also send out daily emails to our members with a recording of this call and any relevant links. And so make sure that you're getting those emails and paying attention to those and opening them as they come. If you're not a member and you're on this call, welcome. We're glad that you're joining us. All of the resources and all of the recordings are housed on our website at greensboro.org/COVID-19. Again, you can find the archived calls on recordings. You can find all that sort of stuff. Again, greensboro.org/COVID-19. A couple of things while we're getting started here. First of all, we've talked about this, and I'm hopeful that maybe some of the things we've talked about have helped push us forward. Please fill out your census forms while you're at home. Hopefully you've gotten those in the mail. Some of us, like me, have gotten a form and then gotten a reminder postcard. So please do fill those out. It's an accurate count is essential for us, for our community, for representation at the federal level, for funds that are dispersed at the federal level, a lot of things, including statistics that businesses look at when they're deciding on a new location or an expanded location. A lot of that census data plays a role. And so we want to make sure we've got a real accurate count on the other side of this. And so make sure that you're filling out your census forms. We've also got another thing we wanted to bring to your attention, and we'll put links to this in our social media. I've already seen it in our social media. We'll put it in emails. The Downtown Greensboro Inc. Has started a GoFundMe to fund meals for our frontline workers at Cone Health. It's a great partnership that will enable a number of our downtown restaurants to feed those folks and get paid for that. And so we keep them rolling, and we also get to do good by providing some meals to those frontline workers that are working their butts off right now in the midst of this pandemic. So we'll send out that link so that you can contribute to their GoFundMe opportunity there. And then real quick, one more thing before we start, and I'll talk about this a little bit before at the end. Starting next week, we're going to be switching up the topics and the hosts of our daily action calls. We'll still be at 3 p.m. every day, but you'll be hearing on some of those days from somebody other than me. I know a number of you are going to be crushed by that, but I've got an incredibly talented team, and so I want more of them to be engaged in this. They are engaged, I can tell you that. They're helping us bring these topics to you, and so it'll be a great opportunity for them to host these. We're incorporating a number of different types of information, including thinking about recovery, some virtual networking, some really great conversations in our community. We'll have information in the email this afternoon and a full schedule of topics tomorrow. So pay attention to those emails on our website for more information. But we will continue the calls. We're kind of feeling like maybe the shock and awe phase of what we're going through is over. It's time maybe to transition a little bit out of federal emergency relief and that sort of thing. We'll certainly bring those topics to you if warranted, if something changes, if phase 4 of the relief comes forward. We won't miss out on any of that critical information. But we do want to pivot a little bit, start talking about things, some skills maybe you can learn while you're at home, those sort of things. So be paying attention to those sort of things for those emails so we can get that information to you. Today's topic is a really good topic. I know some may feel this is kind of an academic or dry topic, but I can tell you it is incredibly important in today's day and age. We're going to talk about cash flow and interruption. So the ABCs of cash flow and interruption. And joining me today is Rendell Richards. Rendell, who goes by Rendy, is the CFO and partner of Scale Finance. Since 2006, Scale Finance has provided flexible finance and accounting solutions to help companies scale. Currently serving over 120 entrepreneurial companies, they deliver pragmatic, affordable accounting and corporate finance support. Randy specializes in improving cash flow and profitability, strategic planning and implementation, and determining the key factors that drive a company's business. Randy, I kind of stumbled through that, but I think what the long and short of it is you're a financial consultant that can help folks understand what their balance sheets say, what their bank accounts say, and how to maximize their finances. Is that correct?
Yeah, Brent, thanks very much. That was a lot to go through. You did well. Can you hear me okay on this call?
I can hear you great. I hope you can hear me well as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, let's get started on this, and I want to ask you a few questions, and hopefully, again, those of y'all who are veterans of this call, you know that we ask you to put your questions in the chat function. So if you go to the bottom of your screen there and click, there's a chat function that will open up, and hopefully you can ask your questions there, and we'll pose them to Randy as he wraps up here. If you're on the call and you want to get in on a question, please maybe tweet it to us, again, at GSO Chamber. So we'll keep an eye on our Twitter account as well. If you want to pose a question, we'd love for you to do that there, but we'll take those questions in writing. But I think my first question is, and it's something I think that is somewhat of a misnomer. Can you be profitable and still have cash flow issues? I get the feeling you can. And I think maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Brent, you can. Great question. Most companies that are profitable, unless they're wildly profitable, can have cash flow issues. And I'll kind of describe how that works. So think of your company. You have employees that make a product or a service that you sell. You at month one. Then also once you provide services.
Randy, hold on for just a second. We lost you for about 10 seconds there. So you have to go back to square one, if you don't mind. We lost your mic there for about 10 seconds.
Okay, sorry for that.
No worries.
Okay, so I'll go back to the beginning then.
Yeah.
Okay, so think you have employees who help you produce a product or a service that you sell. You pay those employees, let's call it in month one. Also in month one, you pay some of your suppliers. Maybe you even pay your rent in advance. Your suppliers will invoice you that month. You pay them in month two, for example. But a lot of companies won't invoice their customers until the end of month one. And then their customers will pay them 30, 60 days later. So they could get the money from their customers in month 3 or 4. So the company has to finance employees and vendors for that period of time until month 3, month 4, whenever the customer pays. It's even worse for a company more than they think. So in order to finance this shortfall, you either need a nice cash reserve or access to external financing, like a line of credit from a bank or something to that effect, in order just to stay in business. The higher the growth rate, the more pressure on cash you will see.
And so, Randy, take us through some specific steps that businesses can take to improve that cash flow outside of, line of credit, which I heard you mention. But are there some fundamental things? Are there some structural things? What are 2 or 3 things that businesses can do to improve their cash flow?
Okay, I look at that in 3 different areas. I'll summarize and then I'll go into each one. There are structural improvements you could make to the business. There are billing and collection practices. And then there are payment practices you can put in place. So regarding structural improvements, You need to focus on what's the root cause of cash flow problems. And I think of that really in two areas. First of all, increase sales levels. And then secondly, improve profitability. And you can improve profitability through increasing prices or reducing cost. Increasing sales levels and increasing pricing in this environment is difficult, but this first section I'm really talking about kind of standard things companies can do. The second cash flow improvement area has to do with billing and collection practices. So one thing you can do is modify payment terms and hold your customers to the terms they agree to. Don't be generous, you're not a bank. If they have payment issues, they can go find their own bank. Second thing you can do is invoice right after your product or service is delivered, rather than wait to the end of the month. That speeds that up. It also makes the customer associate the benefit of what the product or service you delivered to them with the invoice, so they have a warmer feeling for it. Thirdly, you need to have someone at your company dedicated to collecting receivables, dedicated to prompt follow-up if payments are late, in order to set customer expectations. So you need a formal plan for emails and phone calls, sometimes before even the invoice is due, to take the temperature of a customer and let them know you're paying attention. If you're not and they're late paying, you don't say anything, they're tempted to continue paying late. Two more things to do. If you have a longer project, for example, you should try to get periodic payments, deposits along the way. And then lastly, if you accept credit card payments, you can collect when your product or service is shipped or delivered. And instead of being behind the payment curve, you can be ahead of the payment curve. So you can receive that payment before you make all of your expense payments in that month. So that's an ideal situation to be in. Then lastly, so that's kind of on the billing collection side. And on the payment side, suppliers will sometimes provide low-cost financing and other incentives. So you can often work with suppliers to stretch payment terms if you need to. They will work with you because they don't want to lose your business. When you have creditors, you can sometimes work to stretch payment terms with them because they also don't want to lose your business. And then lastly, to stretch payment terms, you can put your payments on a credit card, which gives you typically another month to pay. That's most effective if you can pay that credit card off every month. Then even if you can't during difficult times, it's still worth it to pay a little interest to get that extra 30-day flow. And then the last
I think, Randy, even in today's environment, we're starting to see some of those even credit cards help by allowing people to defer those payments at no interest for 30, 60, 90 days. Are you seeing some of that as well?
Yeah, we sure are. And when we get to the specific actions for this pandemic, we'll describe a little bit of what we see. But there's been a lot of flexibility in the marketplace in recognition of this.
Yeah. So why don't we get into that? What are some of the things we should be thinking about when it comes to cash flow in today's unique environment that we find ourselves in?
Okay. So most of us have probably heard the phrase cash is king. Well, that's an understatement in this environment. Cash is everything. It's even more important now. Everything in the business news you read is about liquidity. Do everything you can to maintain your liquidity. I'll kind of describe a process I went through with a client where we were going to start a particular week working on some things. And I went into the president's office and I said, I think we need to pivot here. I think we need to look at some contingency planning given this pandemic. And he said, thank you. I was thinking the same thing. So one of the first things we talked about is protecting employees to the greatest extent possible. And in some cases, if you need to reduce expenses of consultants, for example, that aren't absolutely mission critical. And I told him he needed to do that, and that might impact me. And in fact, he took me up on my offer, and it did impact me, but it was the right thing to do for the customer, for the client, and I had to tell him that. Then I said, let's focus on collecting receivables. Double down on that, make a concerted effort to collect while customers still have money, and keep up that focus. They had just started bringing in an outside firm to help them, but I said, we have to oops, sorry, there goes the phone. We have to double down on that. Just one moment. All right, I took care of that. I hung up on them.
That's all right, Randy. No worries. We're all working from home. We're hearing lawnmowers and dogs bark and all that sort of thing. So it's all good. It's just part of the environment these days.
Yeah. And in fact, you may want to do an outreach even more assertively with your customers than you had been, especially before you provide them new goods and services. It may impact your sales, but a reduction in sales is better than making a sale without collecting on it. So it will be difficult to over communicate in this environment. The next thing we talked about is looking at our customer base and trying to diversify, looking at customers we thought would be more impacted by this pandemic and those who would be less so, and then engage in several scenarios of contingency. So when we reviewed the customers, we tried to identify how much each one would be impacted, and some were 100% impacted, some less so. And then we were able to find new customers that weren't impacted so much. So the plan was to take all that, put it together, and that would give us a first order estimate of our revenue impact. Then the next step was to review our expenses. The goal is to reduce expenses to match your revenue drop. That's difficult to achieve. Often the expenses don't go down as fast as revenue, but you have to do everything there. Address the largest expenses. For example, speak with your landlord about delaying rent payments, things like that. Partly, Brent, to your question, what we heard yesterday from Stan Park is that insurers are becoming much more flexible now on premium payments. And there's several different ways Stan described that they will try to go with their customers and reduce the immediate impact of premium payments. And after all that, you still may need to do some layoffs, some furloughs, some reduction in hours and pay. And there may be cases where a fractional use resource is the best fit for you. And there are folks like me, they're in finance, or folks like me in HR and marketing and a lot of different areas. So that may be a short-term option for companies.
So fractional use in terms of consultants and interim personnel and that sort of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So maybe you had a full-time employee that you couldn't retain, and you had to furlough, but you could bring in somebody on a part-time basis that can get most of what you need done on less than 40 hours a week. Gotcha. So when you go through all that, you'll have a forecast on the impact on your business. You can do an income statement forecast and then convert that to a cash flow forecast for two reasons. First of all, you need it. And then secondly, your banker will be impressed that you've done that, and they need that information to help them feel more comfortable. Even if it's not a great story, at least they know you've done the work.
Very good. Obviously there's a lot of folks out there right now looking around, working on applications with their bankers and that sort of thing that are, kind of doing this as quickly as they possibly can, haven't had an opportunity yet to really do this kind of planning yet. So this is going to help, I think, in that next phase, again, once the shock and awe is over in the next phase. And then there's one one thing that I don't think we've talked about yet, and that's about debt payments. We've all got them, but how do you push those things out for a while? Can you push those things out for a while? That's all part of your fixed costs, right? Or some of those debt payments.
Yeah, great question. That used to be much more difficult. In this environment, I guess not surprisingly, it's not so difficult. At Scale Finance, we have 8 partners, and we've all been trading information as the CARES Act and other government initiatives have been rolling out. And we've been sending that to our clients and trading what we see in the marketplace. So regarding debt payments, the first thing I would say is if you don't already have a good relationship with your banker, now's the time. And don't worry about communicating too much. It's almost impossible. So when it comes to loan payments, contact your banker and request payment moratoriums on your loans. We have seen different scenarios from as little as making interest-only payments for 3 months or so to as much as making no payments whatsoever for 3 months or so. You still need to make the payments at the end, but banks understand the situation and they're willing to work with you. So our recommendation is ask for more than you think you might need. You just might get it. Secondly, take advantage of all the new government programs, the CARES Act. There's an EIDL loan. There's the Paycheck Protection Program loan, which is great stuff. I know you've had folks on these calls who've described that before, but that PPP program is, if you spend it on what it's intended, it's free money and it keeps your employees with you. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And then if you eventually obtain more loan dollars than you find out you need, that's okay. You just have to pay it back. And you pay it back at a very low interest rate over an extended period of time. So that's hard to beat. The last thing I would say is if you have a line of credit with your bank, now may be the time to draw it down and make sure you have enough cash. You may wind up drawing down too much and paying a little extra interest, but that extra cash could be the difference that keeps some companies in business.
Gotcha. Great tips on all this. Rendy, are you starting to see, I know there are a lot of small businesses out there that may be a little bit intimidated, overwhelmed, whatever the term is, by all of the applications that are out there for an EIDL loan, for a PPP program, for this, for that. Is your team helping your clients put those together? Are you starting to see some demand for folks to kind of help those small business owners make heads and tails of what's out there right now?
Yeah, it's all over the map. That the clients that I've been serving are a little bit larger, so they typically will have a full-time controller and full-time accounting staff. They're fairly sophisticated and they can handle that themselves. They don't really need me to help them. We have other clients at Scale who are really pretty small, and it may be their only accounting department is our part-time controller, or maybe they have a bookkeeper and our part-time controller. The business owners are not sophisticated financially and they need the help. So we're helping a lot of companies with these applications and with forecasting and with trying to get through the business. Looking what the expected cash outflow is going to be and how many employees that will support, and unfortunately determining who can stay and who can't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A couple of questions here on our chat. Are banks willing to lower interest rates on lines of credit right now? Are you seeing them being willing to lower those interest rates for a temporary basis, given what's going on?
That's a good question. I can't tell you that I have any direct experience with that. It may be that they're very flexible on pushing out payment, and they may want to keep the interest rate the same, but then again, interest rates have crashed over the last month or two. So if they're tied to the 10-year Treasury or 1-year LIBOR, or whatever, 1-month LIBOR, chances are those rates are going down too.
That makes sense. This one, this question may require you to have a crystal ball, Randy, but I know that you're working with your clients and they're looking at you to have maybe a little bit of a crystal ball. But this is probably part of your analysis. How far out do you recommend doing a cash projection, considering the potential impact of COVID-19?
I'm going to give you a high-level answer, then a specific answer.
Okay.
So typically when I work with clients, we put together a 1-year budget by month, by line item, revenue and expense, and a cash flow budget. Then as the year goes on, we update our actual results there, and then we forecast the rest. So we are always looking at the full year. In this case, if you haven't done any of that, take a long time to do the whole enchilada. You at a minimum want to look at 3 months. I think you'd want to certainly look at 6 months. The difficulty is nobody knows what's going to happen, and you watch the business news, everybody's just flailing around and guessing. But if you lay out what your assumptions are, and then the assumptions change, you can see the impact on your financials. Right.
So we are having to use our crystal ball a little bit. Everybody's is different, but you've got to at least make some guess, but then understand what the assumptions are behind those guesses.
That's right.
Gotcha. Randy, I'm supposed to wait about 8 to 10 seconds to see if we get additional questions. I'm learning about conference calls and Zoom and all that sort of stuff. We've gotten a great education over the past couple of weeks on this, but I don't have any additional questions from my audience here. I'm hoping that we're going to get somebody soon to do that. So let's see what we get in another 8 to 10 seconds. What haven't we asked you that you were interested in providing our audience today?
I will tell you that for those folks who haven't looked into the Paycheck Protection Program, almost everybody is eligible. I reached out to the woman who cleans our home and asked her if she applied, and she hadn't, so I connected her with a banker from her bank who I knew through another client, and sent her some information for her to work through that. I contacted the young woman who cuts my hair and asked her, because she'd be eligible too. So if you haven't applied for that or the EIDL or anything, we would be happy at a minimum just to send you the appropriate information. No charge to do that. And if a business needs a little bit of help, we'd be glad to help as well.
That's great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. You're right. Almost everybody's eligible. Unfortunately, chambers of commerce are not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program, but we are for the idle loans. Somehow we got left out of PPP, but hopefully maybe down the line we'll get some help from that. But we're a 501c6. There are some nonprofits that are eligible, 501c3s, 501c19s, but those are the only nonprofits, unfortunately, eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program.
I did not realize that.
Yeah. We were disappointed, but I think there may be a chance down the line for us to be added at some point. In the meantime, we're doing exactly what you're saying here. We're looking at our cash flow projections. We're looking at everything we can to kind of get a sense for what our next 3 to 6 months look like, making sure that we're protecting our employees, right? I mean, you said that right at the very beginning of the call. I love that. I mean, ultimately, your business's greatest asset are your employees. So make sure that you're protecting them first and foremost, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, Randy, I don't see any more questions on the call. We're right at 30 minutes, which is perfect. It's exactly the way these calls have been going. We really do appreciate you being willing to jump on this call with us. We appreciate your expertise, and we really appreciate your willingness to jump in and help anybody who might need that help. And if you don't mind, send out some contact information for you so people can get in touch with you. That's incredibly generous of you, but that's what we've been seeing throughout this experience, is that this community really circles the wagons and helps each other out, and you're no different than everyone else we've had on the call. So thank you for being willing to do that.
Yeah, happy to. Hope I could help in any small way our fellow chamber members.
Well, thank you so much. So let me wrap us up in a couple of ways. First of all, again, we talked about how these calls may feel a little different to you next week. You'll hear more about that on tomorrow's call. You'll hear a little bit more on that from the email that will go out this afternoon, wrapping this call up. I think you'll be excited about that. And again, you'll get to hear different voices other than mine, which is really, really good as well. Some great chamber voices that you'll be able to hear. Chamber voices, Action Greensboro voices, Launch Greensboro voices. We've got a lot of things that we do as a Chamber of Commerce, and some incredible work that we want to share with you, no doubt about that. Please do also, we'll send out that information again on the downtown restaurant and DGI's effort to feed our healthcare workers on the front lines. So you won't want to miss that either. And then tomorrow's call, we're going to have Mayor Nancy Vaughn on the call with us tomorrow. She'll be talking about what's going on in the community, just kind of an overarching community level set, if you will, at this point. So Thursday, April 9th, we'll be talking about where we stand, what she's experienced, what kinds of measures they're taking to make sure that we remain safe as a community, and kind of what she's looking at over the next week or two, or maybe even beyond that, in terms of, are we going to see things, those restrictions increase, lessen? I think it'll be a really, really good session tomorrow to talk to her, and quite frankly, to thank her for her service and for her team's service. There are still folks out there picking up our garbage. There are still folks out there making sure that we have these great parks that while we're social distancing, we can get out and blow off some steam. It takes an awful lot for a city staff, and of course, firemen, policemen, our first responders are out there on a daily basis as well, keeping us safe. So a great opportunity for us to hear from the mayor, give her some appreciation, and of course, hear what's going on in the community around our COVID-19 response. So again, please join us tomorrow at 3:00. It will be our last daily action call of the week. We are off on Good Friday. And so we will be taking that day off, and then we'll start up again on Monday. But until tomorrow at 3:00, please stay home, stay safe, stay well, protect you, protect everyone else in the community. And Rendy, again, one more time, thank you for your willingness to be on the call and for your willingness to help us going forward.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation.
Great. Everybody have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much. Bye now.
All right. Bye.